Thank you for coming and welcome back to Be the 90. Today we're going to talk about one of the more important things involved in you purchasing a piece of property, which is the purchase agreement itself. I'm going to try to go through it item by item. This is an Indiana contract, but I think in many ways it's going to be very similar to what other purchase agreements would be. What you're going to find is, first of all, the first part of the contract is who the parties are involved. You need to make sure that the party selling the property is the property that's listed on the property card with the county that you live in, or the state that you live in, that it addresses the full title is exactly the same as what you would see. So if it's in the name of an LLC, it might be Joe Smith for benefit of XYZ LLC. That is an important, and the same thing with the purchaser. Make sure that that's the case. If you are someone buying the property and you're not sure how you want to take title of it, make sure in this part of the property that you put, like I would put Alan Stamper and or assignees. That way I have the ability down the road to be able to assign this to an LLC or to partners if I bring people in and things such as that. It helps you to be able to have more flexibility when you're purchasing the property. The second part is where it actually addresses the property itself. Most of the time, it's not just 321 South 5th Street or whatever. It also will have in there the tax ID number, a brief legal description that you usually can get off the county services, the same one that you get how the property is titled from. And if you're talking about real estate or blank land or something that hasn't been titled yet, from the standpoint of maybe you're cutting a piece out of a piece of property that's 50 acres now and you're going to be buying 5 acres of it, what you will do is do an exhibit that you can put as part of the purchase agreement where you outline what the property is that you're buying, so that there's a clear delineation of what you're expecting as a purchaser and what the seller is expecting to be able to sell it to you. The third thing is the price or the consideration that's coming and that you're offering to the seller if you're a purchaser, or that you're offering to sell the property to a buyer for. And many times also here, you're going to be, what terms is it? Is it a cash deal? Is it based upon financing? What is it based upon? The next part is earnest money. How much money are they giving you up front in consideration that, hey, if for some reason I try to walk away from this, you get to keep this. This is my earnest attempt. As the buyer, I'm giving you earnest money, saying that as long as you do what you have agreed to in this purchase agreement, if I want to get out of this, you get to keep that money. The next thing that you'll find is a place for additional provisions. This would be things like a finance addendum, where if I can't get my financing as a purchaser, I can walk away from the property. Many times that finance addendum is very important because it gives you the ability in there, if for some reason the property doesn't appraise or the bank won't loan you the entire amount of money, then you have the ability to walk away. Because of that, you may have heard me discuss in earlier broadcasts that a cash deal many times will be preferred by a seller because of the fact that the finance addendum won't matter. On a cash deal, you're saying, I'm going to buy it and you're going to get to keep my earnest money as long as you do what the contract says. And there's no addendum in there or no what ifs on whether or not it gets financed or not. The second thing is a lease property addendum. That is where it says, okay, I have tenants or I have people that I lease this property to, and I want to be able to, as part of this, when I buy it, I'm acquiring those leases. So I'm going to be able to have in there that they're going to have to assign all of that to me. I will get the past deposits that the tenant has paid and be able to continue the operation of the contract and be able to count on that cash flow coming in from the investment. The third thing is a zoning or governmental approval form. There, I think you may have heard in previous broadcasts where I talked about why you might need an attorney or somebody to represent you if you need to get a zoning change or approvals from the government, where you have someone that on your behalf to go to that government entity and get those approvals. Well, what this does in the purchase agreement is it gives you the ability, if for some reason you don't get that zoning that you need to be able to put whatever type of business you're looking to use it for in, you have the ability to be able to walk away from the transaction and choose not to buy the property. The next thing is a dispute resolution addendum as to how, if there is a dispute down the road, as far as title's concerned, as far as price is concerned, as far as any of the terms of the agreement, then how are we going to settle our dispute? The next thing is a feasibility study addendum. Say you're looking at doing something where you don't know whether or not only would it be zoned for that, but whether or not it would be even feasible to use that land for that particular purpose, because it may have something in the survey, something as far as the geology is concerned, something as far as the land composition is concerned. There's many different factors that would make a feasibility study addendum an important part of a purchase agreement, and one that would be, as a buyer, would be something that would make very good sense to be able to put in there. Also, you might have something called an exchange or representations and warranties addendum. In other words, anything that they've represented to you that's going on with the property, if they tell you that it's zoned a certain way, or if they tell you that the HVAC unit is brand new, any representation that's made by the seller to the buyer, that addendum would cover that, and it would define for how long a period of time that representation would be covered. Those are some of the addendums involved with the contract. The next thing would be closing date. When is the property being closed, and at what terms? Is it closed immediately, where you get possession immediately as soon as the closing's done? Or is there a delay where maybe the current seller needs 30 days to be able to get their stuff out of the property, or things such as that? That's where the possession side of things would come in. The next portion is interesting, and it's called it's concerning real estate taxes. Now, in Indiana, the way that everything is done in commercial real estate, not necessarily in residential, but in commercial real estate, is such that up until the day of closing, the seller pays the taxes, and then from the day of closing on, the new buyer pays the taxes. But if you look at things like residential real estate, or even smaller commercial real estate, you could see where it's done on a biannual type of basis, or it's done on a different, what they would call in arrears type of basis as far as taxes is concerned. Most of the time, as a buyer, I want it to be as of the day of closing. That way, all of the taxes that are owed and all the enjoyment that was done by the seller is paid for up till the day of closing, and then you, as the buyer, who is going to enjoy the future fruits of your labors and money in that property, pay the taxes from then on. Beyond that, you look at things such as a title commitment or insurance. Well, first you would have insurance, that you're going to get insurance on the property and when you're going to do it, and that you will have it upon closing. That's really something that is usually more concerning to the banker or anybody loaning you money, but it is something that's in the contract that shows that you are looking at moving forward and you are looking at actually taking ownership of the property. The next thing is a title commitment. Who's going to pay for that title and commitment and work? Where are you getting it from? Which title company are you using? Things such as that. Another thing would be a survey. Are you going to ask for a survey on the property so that you can know exactly what you're buying? We recommend that you do, in many cases, get a survey, especially if it's out in the county or an area that isn't really heavily populated. If you look at in a city or in a community, many times the boundaries have been there for many years and that property has changed hands several times where the borders of that property are very well defined. But even then, you can see where there could be a dispute among you and a property owner where their fence might be on your land or things that could, in many ways, hurt your enjoyment of the property and make it very much harder to get it done down the road than it would be to have that taken care of ahead of time before you actually purchase the property. The other thing is to inspection clause. What inspections do you want to have? Are you going to just have someone come in and help you by doing an inspection of all the mechanicals and the things involved with the property? Or are you going to do that yourself? Or as we've talked about previously, bring in a general contractor or an engineer or someone to be able to help you to be able to determine the suitability of that property for your needs and whether or not there's problems or things that need to be addressed by the seller before you actually purchase the property. This is one of those buyer beware things. You do need to get that taken care of because once you purchase the property, it's a lot harder to get any type of repairs or anything done than it is to get it done ahead of time. The other thing that you might want to look at as far as inspections is actually having an environmental inspection done on the property to make sure that nothing that you're acquiring was a potential problem that's going to have to be fixed in the future. The environmental side of things, especially as we have so many things being looked at going forward, and because of things that happened in the past with different types of property, especially manufacturing and things in chemicals and processes that at one time we didn't realize were as hard on the environment or that as we realize today. It's very important that you understand, whether it had underground tanks there but previously, whether or not there was a manufacturing process done that might have something detrimental like PCBs or things such as that. That environmental survey, at least, especially getting what they would call a phase one done, where they go back into the history of the property and see what the uses have been in the past and whether or not there's any potential concerns. And then if they find anything that's flagged, then they do a phase two or a phase three to determine to what extent that might be a problem and whether or not there needs to be remediation done. Besides the environmental side of things, we have the physical inspections that we've already talked about, but there is an opportunity in here if you just want to buy the property or it's just land and you feel like that you don't want to do so, you can waive your right for inspections. And again, this is something that every time there's something that could make it so you don't purchase, it makes it less likely for the seller to take your offer. So if you're looking in a competitive situation with somebody else and you both are offering the same price, but yours is maybe cash and where there's no inspection requirement, you're waiving inspections. Well, obviously your offer is going to be seen as superior to another one where there might be outs for the potential buyer to get out of it. Besides this, there's who pays what expenses are all lined out in the contract. Who pays to release the current loans and things, which normally that is the seller. The closing fee, normally I would suggest that be split equally, where the buyer pays half of it and the seller pays half of it. Who prepares the deed or the vendor's affidavit? Most of the time, I would suggest that the seller should pay for that. Who would pay the fees associated with assuming or getting a new loan? Most of the time, it's the buyer that would pay that. Title search fee. Many times that's split equally, but again, I think that's something that most of the time the seller would pay that. The title policy, the owner's policy, is usually paid by the seller, and the lender policy, if you are getting a loan and it's not a cash deal, is usually paid by the buyer. And then all other title costs, again, I usually suggest that those are split equally, as that's fair to both parties. When you look at these things and the considerations that we've talked about in the contract today, it's very important that you have a realtor that understands those, that can help you through the process and explain, similar to what I have today, the pros and cons of each way in the contract of doing it, the ways of doing the taxes, whether or not, given what you're looking to do, you need to have addendums in there to be able to give you the ability to get out of the purchase agreement and be able to get your earnest money back if for some reason you need things like zoning done, you need a feasibility study done, you want to have inspections done, you need to borrow money and have a finance addendum. All of these things are important that you have a good realtor to be able to represent you on and be able to come there on your behalf and write the agreement in a way that not only will stand up to the scrutiny of an attorney or a legal battle if down the road there needs to be one, but represents you in a way that's fair to both parties and helps you facilitate getting the property purchased, or if you're looking to sell, getting it sold at the best price possible with the least amount of legal problems. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, as it helps us with the YouTube algorithms.